Casey, you talk about sort of doing the right thing in your last answer, which I totally agree with, and that kind of links to the ethics of an organization, which I do also think links back to the values and the vision. Now, I know that when leaders are in successful organizations and they're listed, there's a lot of pressure in terms of performance, making sure the financials look right because share price is affected by it all. And I think at some moments, leaders get put into ethical dilemmas or situations where they have to make sort of difficult calls. So in your book, was that something that, in your interviews, was that something that came up? And do you have a tip for people in terms of when they are faced with an ethical dilemma, what should they do? And is it purely just the leader that has to have strong ethics, or is it something that has to filter down to the whole organization?
Yeah, no. So one thing that when I talked about values, the one question that I asked, what is the one tip that I asked the leaders, you've got people who are reading this book who are not at your level, and they'll be asking, what is it that I need to do to be a valuable employee? And a number of them said that you need to have the integrity. You need to have the integrity because the lack of integrity is something that can have, really catastrophic consequences, not only for your career, but also for the organization. So there's a few examples. One example I have is Boipelo Lekubo, who's responsible for Harmony Gold, which is, the biggest gold mining company in the Southern Hemisphere. And she says, when they were faced with challenges with some of their mines that were not performing, as you say, being a leader of a big company, people want to look at the numbers. It's all about the bottom line. Your share price is linked to how well the company performs. So you may be looking for answers, and the answer may be simple when you look at it at a spreadsheet, and it's a simple matter of cut the employees. You need to just go into retrenchment, and that is the answer. But each and every employee that you cut has got people who rely on them. Some of these mines are in places where the only economic activity is mining. So they can't, when they lose their mining job, go and do something else. Maybe some of us in Johannesburg, if we lost our jobs, would find some other thing for us to do. But for them, that is all, these families that are dependent on them. So the ethical thing and the right thing to do there is to, whereas it may be costly from a financial point of view, look for a way or something else as a cost-saving measure other than getting employees into unemployment, right? So it may be a longer way, but it also ends up building, a relationship with the community, because you need the community if you're going to be successful in certain areas and so on. And in the long term, the reputation of the entity has better fruits. Another example I have is Nopasika, who was the head of a pension fund, and pension funds look to invest in companies that are moral, right? So for her, when she was the head of a pension fund, people used to come to her and ask her for investment money, and she'd have to look at, their ESG, their environmental, social, and corporate governance levels to decide whether it's a company investing in, not just the financial point of view. Now, when she crossed over from head of pension fund to become the financial director of Balowal, she talks about how on the other side of the table, the challenge is really real, because here you are trying to be a moral company, but at the same time, the one thing that flicks on the news, you don't see on the news moral index, right? That is not shown, flashed on the news. All they talk about is Balowal's share price, and the noise is about the share price. And therefore, it becomes a real challenge when you have these dilemmas where you have a conflict between short-term gain, right? Because it is a short-term gain when you sacrifice, morals and societal good for gains, right? And long-term value, long-term value that is pinned on doing what is moral and what is noble. So she talks about so many scenarios now that you have where you have to take the long way out, and the long way out is painful. It may have an effect on bottom line and so on. That was one thing that you find now in times of COVID, for example. So the CEO of Old Mutual, CFO rather of Old Mutual, for them it would have been very easy, right? There are a lot of people who sell their policies out in the market. It could be very easy for them to say, look, if you don't sell, the policy is based on commission. If you don't sell, you don't get a commission. Now, what happened during COVID? Everybody was at home. These people were limited. They couldn't be able to go out, knock on doors and say, I'm selling policies, And so the insurer, Old Mutual, took the long way. In other words, they supported their salespeople, right?
Mm-hmm.
They gave them money, it wasn't the amount of money that they received on a monthly basis, but it was something to help them survive during that COVID period, right? So it is, obviously the insurer is making losses as well, because there's many people making claims, people are sick, people are dying and so on, right? But they dipped into their reserves to support their people during this period, knowing that COVID is not going to last forever. And you can imagine then what the salespeople think of the company when they go now and sell policies. They think they're selling policies for a company that is a good company, that stands for people, that is ethical, that is moral, and that will be there when the people need them the most. So it's not a matter of saying buy an Old Mutual policy and when you need them to pay the claim, they won't pay the claim, because the salesperson now actually believes it because they've seen it in practice. So that is about living the ethical values. And a lot of people say, we've got all these values on a board. When you walk into a reception, they've got all these beautiful things that they've written at the top of it. But are you really living it? When the iron hits the fire, are you going to leave the values that are on the wall, or is it just some fancy thing that you have published on your glossy financials or in your reception? Yeah.